A lot of leaders still believe that if they're capable, if they deliver, if they perform, that's enough. But in today's environment, everyone in our listening audience knows this. That's clearly not true. Capability might get you into the room, but it doesn't move the room. This is the People Dividend. I'm Mike Horne, and today I'm joined by Chris March, an executive coach with over 2 decades of experience working with leaders across 80 countries and helping them move from mid career inflection points into real executive impact. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm so delighted. Now, you've worked with leaders globally across
hmm
industries, across
hmm
cultures. When you step back from all of that, what's the pattern? What consistently holds capable leaders back from actually stepping into executive level impact?
Very multifaceted when you think about that question. I think in a lot of ways you have to firstly get out of your own way is one of the biggest things that I see. And you also don't know what you don't know. Typically early on when I work with a lot of early year career professionals as they're moving to that executive, understanding some of the nuances between going from a leader to an executive and the nuances that the differences between those as well. And I think one of the biggest things, and I was caught in this trap as a very young leader myself, is you don't want to be liked as a leader. You need to be respected as a leader. And I think there's a big difference between those two things, which I see happen time and time again. And with the people that I work with, a lot of the times leaders aren't always in those roles because they're great people. They're great at their jobs and they're put in these roles because they're a top performer. Let's say they're a top performer in sales. They're put into a sales leadership role. Doesn't mean they're good to your first opening point. They're good at moving people. And that's what leadership is helping move people along. So the patterns that I see is a lot of people don't sharpen the saw, don't really put in the
Mhm.
time to become capable in being an effective leader. They're just good at their jobs first.
So, where do they get it wrong? 'Cause yes, we have a whole history of
hmm
people advance because of their technical skills. They're promoted on the basis of their technical skills, even though we know from social science research that doesn't really define leadership attributes. You talk about this about respect, but where do these new leaders where do they get it wrong?
In today's age, there's distribution of content. There's so much information that is presented to us. We've overcomplicated leadership. We truly have. And I think we get in our own analysis paralysis around what leadership is and isn't. And there's so many different people telling you what leadership is. And we've forgotten that. And we're trying to do multiple different things when if you just want to be effective, focus on people. That's what it comes down to in helping people move from point A to point B. And your role as a leader is to help guide them with the vision. What's the vision? Where are you helping people go from point A to point B? And what's the mission that we're on together? And how can you support people to get there? That is effective what leadership is. And in a lot of different ways, we've overcomplicated it with so many different people telling you what you should and should not do.
Yes, I've always been a big believer that simple is hard, complex is easy. But let's continue this theme because it's certainly something that I resonate with, something I agree with strongly,
hmm
that being qualified isn't enough anymore. Let's make that concrete.
hmm
What replaces it?
Being qualified for a leadership role.
Right.
hmm
Because it's simply not your technical skills. So what qualifies someone into this world of leading?
In a lot of different ways, you hear the phrase leadership. Leaders are not born; they're made. So a lot of I truly believe that I wasn't born a leader. I'm sure you weren't born a leader as well, Mike. It's someone who's putting in the effort to become a leader. That comes with being someone who is to a certain degree obsessed with their own personal development and someone that is focused on helping people. That's the first function that you need to be focusing on is helping people and helping people move from point A to point B. And are you doing that yourself? Are you leading yourself? Leadership comes back to self leadership. And I look at it that way. If I'm leading myself effectively, that means I'm going to turn up and lead others effectively. So leadership really, I'm a true believer that leadership starts with self, and I hold the highest standard for myself by the actions that I take every day. And through that and through the leadership lens that I provide and I lead and help other people see, that's what leadership is.
Right. So if capability isn't the differentiator, that technical skills isn't the
Mhm.
differentiator, are you saying that learning is the differentiator, the ability to learn?
The ability to learn, the ability to be open to feedback, the ability to be vulnerable, the ability to show humility is important because you as a leader, to my previous point, you're not there to be liked, you're there to be respected. And that's, I think, something early on that is very misplaced. You're there to make tough decisions. You, as a leader, are going to make 10, sometimes more decisions daily, right? So you have to make the right decisions at that point. So that is what you're ultimately there to do. So doing the hard things and being uncomfortable with doing the hard things, and not everyone is built for that. And I think that's an important distinction.
Right. Well, you know, one of the topics that's discussed frequently in leadership is presence. It's a
Executive
topic that
presence. Yep.
gets
Yep.
executive presence. It gets talked about it a lot, but I think it's rarely defined well. When you say executive presence, what are
Mm-hmm.
we actually talking about?
We're talking about someone who communicates well. And when you communicate well, if you want to distill it down, communication is verbal, but it's also listening. And I think listening is one of the most underrated skills when it comes to leadership. And as a leader, if there's one key thing that you need to continually work on is communication. And it's something I've not mastered. I'm sure something you continue to master as well, Mike. If you're a great communicator in business and in life, your relationships, that's going to open up more doors and allow you to be more effective. Secondly, to that, listening. What does listening truly mean is you paying attention, allowing someone to have space. And are you asking the right questions and being curious to give them the space to allow them to give you ideas? And a lot of people just
Right.
say, I'm a good listener, but are you truly listening to the words, or are you just thinking about the next thing you're going to say? And I can see you smiling, Mike.
Oh, sure. Many others will see us smiling on this. When we think about, executive presence, I really like to deconstruct that a little bit with you. Is how does it, show up in a room? So it can show up through, some good listening habits, but how does it show up for someone who is in a leadership role in real decisions and not in theory? How does this presence show up?
You have to be decisive. As I said, as an executive, you're making tens, maybe hundreds of decisions daily. So you need to have that lens as well, because people are always looking to you to make that decision. So, firstly, you need to be confident in your decision making. You need to be decisive. That communication lens is key, as I said. But there's also the element of the way the leader carries themselves as well. There's a certain modeling that I believe an executive needs to have as well, because you're gravitating towards people and holding the room and holding the space. If you're part of an executive boardroom, which I'm sure you've been a part of many, you can typically see who the executives are that lead those rooms based on their presence, the way they're communicating, and holding that room. So that's the way I look at it.
Right. And, on the other side, what's the fastest way to lose it?
It's a great question. I think it's you embodying the words. Leadership is a verb, it's action. It's not words. People, there can be a lot of empty words. Are you making the right decisions? Are you showing integrity? And I think over the recent 5 to 6 years, the pandemic, we saw varying degrees of good leadership and also bad leadership as well. So that's how you can lose that space. I think about this a lot, and I remember one of the key things that happened during the pandemic as the whole world shifted revenue, we were all living behind closed doors. A lot of businesses made some tough decisions. A lot of CEOs had to let go of a lot or all of their people. And one that really stood out with me is CEO jumped on a Zoom and just fired everyone on a call. Is that leadership? Is that executive presence? No, I don't think so at all. And there was varying different examples of that. And I just think That is where leadership truly showed up during the pandemic, good and bad.
Sure. Yeah. So let me push on this a little bit. I think a lot of what gets labeled as executive presence, then,
Mm.
to your example, I think about a coaching client I have now. It can also look a lot like performance,
Yes, correct.
signaling,
Yes,
playing the game.
yes.
So, how do you differentiate, Chris, between real leadership and someone who's just learned how to present like a leader? Back to your earlier example,
Mhm.
you can maybe display some effective listening skills, nod your head, you
Yeah, yeah,
hold your arms open, but you're really thinking about the question that you want to ask.
yes.
So, how do you differentiate real leadership and someone who's, and someone who's just learned to present like a leader?
Naturally, I think you as someone who's an effective leader, they're going to be more concise in their delivery versus someone who's being more performative typically will over explain because they don't truly know the content that they're talking about or they don't feel confident in that. So that's one of the first places that I typically see that is they're over explaining, over exerting, and they overexert themselves into the conversation. I know you use the presentation standpoint, but if they're in a room, let's say it's their first executive meeting or one of the first of, they're trying to show their dominance. They're trying to show their smarts versus a more effective leader will allow that to come to them at the right time and place. So I think over explaining is a big one and overexerting themselves.
Over-explaining, overexerting. You talk a lot about helping leaders cut decision bottlenecks, helping leaders, yeah, cut decision bottlenecks. Where do these bottlenecks actually come from?
They come from something I call founder gravity. And founder gravity is key person dependence on the founder. Founders create businesses through their blood, sweat, and tears, and they've created a business that can only scale to their own personal bandwidth. And you get to that point, depending on the revenue and the industry, where everything bottles to you. Every decision, everything across the organization. So you're then creating this bottleneck where they're doing everything. They're doing sales calls, they're doing the marketing, they're also doing the client delivery in some way, shape, or form. So it's not uncommon. And in a lot of the work that I do is removing that bottleneck or dependency and looking at how do we reorganize the business and create some layers so everything is not dependent on this person and put better systems in place to support that overall. And it is very, very hard, let me say, and I'm sure you come across this as well, is the biggest piece is the word trust.
Right. And trustworthiness, I mean, a related concept. When I think about bottlenecks, I often wonder decision bottlenecks, business impact. Is it
Mhm.
lack of clarity? You talked about systems and processes just now, but
It's
is or a lack of courage?
bit of both, Mike. It's a lot of the time I see with the organizations I'm working with, does everyone within your team know what they're truly responsible for? What is the outcome that they own? Do they have a clear job descriptions and KPIs support them in their area of expertise? In a lot of cases, we don't. And that's where to your point, there's an overlap and people are duplicating work in a lot of different ways and you have this bottleneck that's run across the organization.
And what changes in that system? What changes in that team? What changes in that organization when a leader gets it right?
The business runs without them. At a top line level, you want to create a business. You got into business because you wanted more money, more time, more freedom. And typically, with the business owners, founders I'm working with, they have none of that. They're bottlenecked by the complete business because it had them in a stranglehold. They're working weekends, cash flow's tight, all these different things are changing. The ultimate goal that we're working towards is allowing them more time, more freedom.
Yeah, I think, Chris, at the core of this show, The People Dividend, it's a very simple idea that people
Hmm.
drive performance.
Hmm.
But most organizations still treat people as support functions,
Hmm.
not as strategic assets. And
Hmm.
from your perspective, what do leaders still misunderstand about how people actually drive results?
Connecting people to the results is the simplest thing. And what I mean by that is do you as a leader understand why people turn up for work every single day? And do they understand the work of why they do it and why it matters to the greater goal of the organization? Are you able to connect that? A lot of leaders, and I'm not painting everyone's brush, there's a lot of great leaders, but there's also a lot of bad leaders out there. How do we ensure that we understand those people to point being strategic assets, that they're moving towards the outcome and the goals, the organization? If you want me to be tied to that, tell me what's my internal driver to support it. And as you
Right.
as a leader, do you know that? Do you know why Jane or Peter, why do they turn up to work every single day? Are they looking to buy a house? Are they looking to support their kids? What is it? Do you take the time to ask those questions?
Right. And, a lot of leaders, I mean, to that end, and I'm the beneficiary of this, as are you, is a lot of leaders invest heavily in coaching,
Mhm.
development,
Mhm.
so that they're able to bring more of who they are to what they do and make teams work. But at what point, I've wondered at times, at what point does focusing on personal advancement start to disconnect from actually delivering meaningful results from the business, or does it ever disconnect?
Life is one big learning opportunity for us all, and I think if you have that mindset, every day there's opportunities in front of you, and I think you need to look at if you're open to it firstly. Are you open? Are you curious? We live in such an incredible time. You think about the advancement we've seen from an AI perspective, technology that we've seen. Are you truly leaning into that? Are you asking the right questions personally, professionally, of yourself, the most importantly? And it all comes back to self, is the way I look at it. If you're effectively holding yourself to a higher standard and you're leading yourself effectively, good leadership will follow.
Yes, so certainly true. And for the leaders in the audience today, for the leaders who are listening, Chris, what's one shift they can make immediately that would increase their impact, not their visibility,
Mhm.
but their actual impact? What's one shift they can immediately make?
One of the key things that I see that is missed is having regular one on ones. It's very simple, yet very effective. This is the one meeting that you should have every single month that should not be moved. If you want to create more impact and you want to understand what's happening with your people, make that time every single month. Set the agenda, ask them questions, listen, take action. And I promise you, over time, that will compound. You'll hear better solutions. You'll hear what's happening. You'll become a more effective leader if you then take action upon that from what you hear in those sessions.
Sure, when people know that they matter, they can make a difference in terms
Mhm.
of their effort. And when you look at the leaders who actually make it, who create real movement, what do they understand about people that others don't?
Human behavior. It's important to understand what human behavior is. And I'm not saying you have to go away and take a degree to in human behavior, but understanding how we typically operate and supporting that. And that's to our first point. Leadership is about helping people move from point A to point B.
Mhm.
So, what are we doing as a leader to help support them get there?
Yeah, so critical. For me, what I always coach my clients on is to stop and say hello
Hmm.
and invite some conversation. And that can make the difference between sort of performative leadership and effective leadership. This idea about moving the room. Chris, if you were, your last question, I mean, if you were to offer my listeners, our listeners to today's podcast, one piece of advice about starting this developmental journey, about increasing presence, about removing bottlenecks from decision making, what would that piece of advice be?
First thing you want to look at is asking the people around you what you do well, what you don't do well, and what areas you can improve on. Do that from a personal lens and also from a professional lens. This is an exercise that was recommended to me. I think I read it maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it was incredibly powerful. The feedback that I got back, I sent this email out to colleagues and also friends and family. I said, I'm looking to improve, and I want you to be honest. What do I do well? What don't I do well? Where do you think I can improve? It is humbling, but it also is raw data that can help you move forward around the areas. Because a lot of the times, Mike, we have a lot of blind spots
Hmm.
and we think we're good in one area, we're actually not that good. So by doing this test or asking these questions, it's a really, really good exercise and something that's not really spoken about very often. So I'd recommend doing that.
Well, that's great, Chris. I really appreciate your involvement in our conversation today. Thank you for being a guest on the People Dividend.
Thank you, Mike.
And yeah, thank you. This is the People Dividend.
Mhm.
I'd say the key takeaway is that if you're serious about performance, start with people. Until the next episode, everyone stay well.